Hello and good day everyone. My name is Gurpreet Kaur. You can call me Ruby. I'll be leading today's presentation alongside my teammates Gurbachan Kaur, alias Betty, Rosania and Mazwin. We are presenting for DBA 5154 Advanced Human Resource Management, and our topic is Recalibrating Leadership and HRM in Digitally Disruptive World, an adaptive strategy for global edge tech solutions. Let me set the stage with case background. GETS, headquartered in Singapore, has over 4,500 hybrid and remote employees across Southeast Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. This global spread brought many successes, but it also exposed deep HRM challenges. Post pandemic, employees struggled with time zone confusions, digital fatigue, and unclear performance expectations. The situation escalated when a whistleblower revealed favoritism in virtual performance reviews, leading to the HR director's resignation. Trust collapsed, and the employees reported feeling disengaged and undervalued. Now, the new CHRO, Ms. Lynn Zarifa, faces the enormous challenge of rebuilding confidence, redesigning HRM processes, and creating fairness in a multicultural, digitally disruptive environment. That's where our objectives today come in. We will explore leadership styles, review HRM practices and re-engineering strategies, address ethical implications, share strategic recommendations with KPIs, and finally bring everything together with a synthesis and conclusion. With that context, let me now invite Betty to walk us through the leadership styles that are most relevant for GETS.
When we study GETS HR leadership style, we found that no single approach fits every challenge. For Lynn, applying adaptive leadership based on habits theory means stepping back, getting on the balcony, see the pattern, and addressing root causes. This not only addresses technical issues but also helps with deeper concerns such as digital fatigue, declining trust, and cultural misalignment. It's about opening conversation, amplifying diverse viewpoints, and creating dialogues across region. It also means shifting from a know-it-all mindset to one of the learning, unlearning, and relearning. Further building on best transformational leadership theory, Lynn's must also show idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. Employees look for a leader who sets a clear vision while giving individual support. So, Lynn's challenge is to inspire while staying grounded in local realities, especially in multicultural settings. With that, Rosania takes us further into how leadership evolves in a digital world.
Thanks, Betty. Leadership in a remote digital world requires what we now call e-leadership. It's not just about putting people on Zoom calls, it's about using technology intelligently. For Lynn at GETS, that means knowing when synchronous tools like video calls are best for alignment and decision making, and when asynchronous platforms like Slack or Teams updates are more effective to prevent meeting fatigue. When managed well, e-leadership helps reduce digital overload, creates clarity across time zones, and most importantly, builds digital trust. Without trust, no amount of technology will hold a global workforce together. Now, e-leadership alone isn't enough. This is where complexity leadership theory becomes crucial. In today's volatile environment, leaders must strike a balance between global guardrails like ethics, compliance, and shared company values, while still allowing local flexibility. For Lynn, this means empowering regional teams to adapt to their unique cultural and market context, but also making sure that they don't drift so far apart from GET loses its sense of unity. The risk is fragmentation if every region goes its own way. So instead of relying on just one style, we've proposed the ATEC leadership framework: adaptive, transformational, e-leadership, and complexity combined. This integrated approach gives Lin the ability to rebuild trust in the workforce, strengthen engagement across borders, and guide GETS into sustainable growth in a digital disrupted world. Now that we've explored leadership theory at the strategic level, let's translate this into the day-to-day HRM practices. I'll start us off and then Mazwin will take it further. Looking at GETS today, 4 key HRM gaps stand out. First, bias performance management. In virtual environments, visibility bias is amplified. Outspoken employees tend to get noticed, while quieter but equally capable contributors are overlooked. This perception of favoritism has eroded trust. Second, the lack of diversity, equality, and inclusion. DEI initiatives are inconsistent across regions, which leads to uneven representation and cultural insensitivity. Employees don't always feel seen or valued. Unilever, for example, addressed this challenge by creating a global DEI scorecard that tracks representation across all business units, ensuring inclusivity is embedded at every level. Third, digital burnout. Remote staff face long screen hours, blurred work-life boundaries, and constant notifications, leading to stress and disengagement. Microsoft tackled this by instituting digital well-being norms, such as meeting-free Fridays and focus time scheduling with teams, which significantly reduced fatigue. And finally, weak employee voice. Limited feedback channels mean employees feel their opinions don't matter, which stifles innovation and reduces psychological safety. So the question is, how does GETS move from identifying these gaps to actually re-engineering its HRM practices? For that, I'll hand over to Kuza.
Thanks, Rosania. To bridge those gaps, we propose 4 re-engineering strategies. First, to counter performance management bias, GETS should adopt AI-enabled bias-proof performance systems. With fairness audit and algorithmic oversight, evaluation becomes more transparent and less dependent on manager subjectivity. Second, to address DEI gaps, GETS needs a global leadership pipeline and clear career pathway. These ensure equal opportunities for all employees regardless of geography. Building the kind of inclusive pipeline Unilever has successfully institutionalized. Third, to mitigate digital burnout, wellness policies must be built into daily practice. Meeting-free days, enforced downtime, and regular pulse surveys can help employees sustain energy and focus, just as Microsoft has done to great effect. And finally, to strengthen the employee's voice, GETS should introduce inclusive engagement forums across regions, digital platforms, and cross-border town halls where employees can safely share feedback and ideas. This not only builds psychological safety but also harnesses innovation from a diverse cultural perspective. With these strategies are applied together through the ATEC framework, adaptive, transformational, e-leadership, and complexity, GETS can create an HRM system that is fairer, more inclusive, and more resilient. Performance, DEI, well-being, and voice stop being separate issues and instead become part of one integrated ecosystem. Now with those HRM practices redesigned, let's move to the ethical implications that follow. Re-engineering HRM at GETS also raises serious ethical implications. The first is surveillance versus autonomy. Practices like webcam monitoring or keystroke tracking may reassure managers, but they erode trust and create stress. Ethical governance means shifting away from policing inputs to measure outcomes, trusting employees to deliver results rather than proving they are online. The second issue is fairness in performance review across across geographies. Without safeguards, virtual reviews and AI-driven evaluations risk reinforcing hidden bias. To prevent this, GATS must embed fairness audits, 360-degree feedback, and outcome-based appraisal processes. Finally, there are cross-cultural differences in ethical expectations. A single global code won't work everywhere. Lean must balance universal ethical guardrails with local sensitivity to cultural norms. That's where ethical leadership really comes into play, ensuring impartiality, transparency, and inclusivity. Other key concern is digital ethics in AI system. While AI can improve efficiency, it can also embed bias if not properly monitored. That's why algorithmic audits, human oversights, and explainability are critical. AI should support decision making, not replace human judgment. Global frameworks can guide GATS here. The GDPR in Europe set strong standards for data protection and employee privacy, while Apple's privacy first stance has shown that transparency and user control can be competitive advantages, not just compliance measures. By adopting stakeholder theory, Freeman 1984, to account for all voices, and digital ethics principle, Florida 2019, to guide responsible technology use, GATS can ensure that fairness, privacy, and autonomy are at the center of its HRM redesign. In short, ethics at GATS must be more than compliance. It must be about building digital trust and cultural inclusivity. Now, with that foundation in place, Rosanna will walk you through our strategic recommendation.
Our strategic recommendations for GETS are built around four key pillars. First, leadership interventions. Lin must blend adaptive and transformational leadership to foster resilience and innovation. Strengthening e-leadership within the right balance of synchronous and asynchronous communication will reduce fatigue and build trust. At the same time, cross-cultural agility can be developed through leadership exchanges and immersion programs. To track progress, we recommend institutionalizing a leadership agility index. Companies like IBM already use similar agility metrics to monitor leadership adaptability across regions. Second, HRM practices. GETS should implement AI-driven performance management for fairness and transparency while also establishing global talent pipelines with clear succession planning. To give employees a stronger voice, digital platforms like surveys or forums should be enhanced. And to safeguard well-being, digital detox need to be built into hybrid routines. Microsoft, for example, introduced meeting-free days and focus time scheduling through Teams, which significantly reduce burnouts. Third, ethical governance. We propose forming an ethical and digital responsibility board for oversight, along with regular algorithmic audits to detect bias in HR technologies. A global digital conduct code should be launched to standardize data privacy and AI use, complemented by cross-cultural ethics training to ensure consistent practices across regions. Unilever has successfully embedded this approach through its global ethics and compliance program. And finally, measurable KPIs. Success must be visible. We recommend setting targets such as employee engagement index of at least 80%, reducing voluntary turnover by 10%, tracking progress through leadership agility index, and achieving a 15% improvement in diversity and inclusion scores. Leading firms like Google also track employee engagement pulse scores quarterly to ensure accountability and rapid course correction. Together, these four pillars create a framework that is fair, ethical, and performance driven, positioning GETS for sustainable and competitive growth. Now, Betty will bring everything together in a final synthesis. Over to you, Betty.
Future opportunities. So, how do we bring all of this together? The GETS case makes one thing clear: no single leadership style or HRM practices is enough on its own. That's why ATEC framework, adaptive, transformational, e-leadership and complexity is so important. Together, these four pillars guide Ms. Lin to balance adaptability, vision, digital trust and ethical guardrails across the global workforce. But leadership must be matched with action. Therefore, that's why we emphasize HRM redesign, fair performance systems, inclusive talents pipelines, employees' voice performance, and wellness policies to ensure fairness, well-being, and inclusivity in everyday practice. Equally vital is ethical governance. By embedding fairness, audits, privacy standards, cross-cultural ethics training, GETS can prevent future risk while building employee trust and confidence. On the reflection, the key takeaway is this: theory must translate into practice. Leadership models and human resource management frameworks become powerful only when they are supported by measurable key performance indexes like engagement, retention, agility, and diversity. That's how GETS can shift from short-term fixes to long-term sustainability competitiveness. With that, let me hand over to Ruby, who will close our presentation with the conclusion.
To conclude, GETS has been navigating a crisis of broken trust, digital fatigue, and biased HR practices. Through our proposed ATEC leadership framework and the redesign of HRM processes with fairness, transparency, and ethical governance, we believe Ms. Lin can rebuild confidence and position GETS as a future-ready, trusted employer. That wraps up our presentation. Before we end, we would like to take a few minutes to respond to some of the feedback we received earlier, which touched on important questions closely linked to our topic. Thank you once again for your attention. Let's begin our Q&A session. One of the most popular questions was, how can GETS make sure that AI systems in HR don't end up being biased or unfair to employees? I'll direct this one to Betty.
Great question, Ruby. AI in HR is powerful, but it can also be risky if left unchecked. To prevent bias, GETS need to run regular algorithm audits and make sure there's always human oversight in decision making. For example, an audit might compare promotion recommendation across regions and genders, checking that accuracy and fairness are consistent. Employees also deserve transparency, knowing how the system affects performance review or promotion. This builds trust as employees feel the system is not working against them but for them. And this is where our ATC leadership frameworks comes in. Adaptive and transformational leadership ensures employee voices are heard, e-leadership ensures technology is applied responsibly, and complexity leadership provides the global guardrail to keep AI accountable. So instead of being a black box, AI becomes a supportive tool, one that complements, not replaces a manager's judgment. That's how GETS can safeguard fairness. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty, for that clear explanation. It's reassuring to see how our ATEC framework can guide not just people, but also technology towards fairness. Now, building on that, let's move to another big concern that came up in our DBA chat room. One that's less about systems and more about trust. The question we pulled from the chat room connects directly to our recommendations. What is the single most urgent change GETS should implement in the first 90 days to rebuild trust? I'll open this one up for Rosania and Mazwin to share their views.
Thanks, Ruby. For me, the first 90 days should be all about rebuilding trust visibly and quickly. That means publishing a responsible AI and monitoring policy so employees know their data and work are being handled fairly. Alongside that, setting up a people data and AI ethics council would immediately show that GETS values participation and ethics at the highest level. These steps send a clear signal: we've heard you and we're committed to doing better.
I completely agree, Rosania. And I'd add that while policy and council create structure, it's also about human connection. In those first 90 days, Lynn should apply our ATEC framework directly, use adaptive leadership to stabilize emotion, transformational leadership to inspire confidence, e-leadership to clarify communication across time zones, and complexity leadership to balance global standards while local realities. Together, these approaches create not just policies, but also a culture shift. Employees will feel that GATS is serious about fairness and inclusion, which lays the foundation for long-term reforms.
Thank you, Rosani and Mazwin, for those thoughtful insights. And thank you to everyone for the excellent questions. They really brought out the practical side of our analysis. On behalf of my group, we sincerely appreciate your time and engagement. We hope our discussion has given you both inspiration and practical takeaways for how leadership and HRM can be recalibrated in the digital age. With that, we will officially close our Q&A. Thank you.